Between Great Slave Lake and the Churchill River, Chipewyan bands formerly covered a large portion of Western Canada. The southern portion of the Northwest Territories and the northern portions of the provinces of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba today comprise the Chipewyan ancestral homeland. A wedge of territory on Hudson Bay's west shore between the Cree to the south and the Inuit to the north was likewise under Chipewyan sovereignty. Because their shirts were pointed at the bottom, the Cree gave them the Chipewyan moniker, which is pronounced Chip-a-y and meaning pointed skins. All Indian peoples belonging to the Athabascan or Athapascan linguistic family are now referred to by the Chipewyan band, Athabasca. The largest Athapascans in Canada and Alaska were the Chipewyan. Their lifestyles are similar to those of the beaver, TSATTINE, DOGRIB, THLINGCHADINNE, HARE, KAWCHOTTINE, SLAVEY, ETCHAREOTTINE, YELLOWKNIFE, TATSANOTTINE, and other neighbors in the area around Great Slave and Great Bear Lakes, all of whom are classified as belonging to the Subarctic Culture Area. Subarctic Indians were nomadic hunter-gatherers who lived in small groups of extended families. Ways of life. The Chipewyan people lived on the northern frontier of the subarctic, where the tundra or bare land transitions from the taiga or northern forest. The summers were too brief and tainted by mosquitoes and blackflies, while the winters were lengthy and extremely chilly. The Chipewyan lived in movable skin tents that resembled the teepees of the Plains Indians and were always on the move in pursuit of sustenance. They built a framework of poles by arranging them in a circle, leaning them against each other and tying them at the top. They then covered the framework with sewn caribou hides, leaving a hole for smoke to escape and forming a floor at the base with spruce boughs and caribou skins. The seasonal migrations of the caribou herds were the center of life for the Chipewyan bands. As the animals moved northward onto the treeless tundra in the spring, several bands collected at the border of the wooded taiga to intercept them. The Chipewyan made a comeback in the fall to hunt the caribou during their southern migration. To capture the animals, the hunters employed a number of strategies. They forced them into bush corrals where they could slaughter a lot of them. Or they used ropes that were hung between two trees to entangle animals. Or they assaulted the caribou as they swam over lakes or rivers in boats constructed of spruce or birch bark. Antler banging was another tactic used to deceive the caribou bull into believing that two other bulls were squabbling over a female. Although spears were also used for the kill, the chosen weapon was a birch bow with arrows that were either bone-tipped or stone-tipped. Every component of the caribou was used by the Chipewyan. By adding hot stones, fresh meat was roasted in pots made from caribou hide or birch bark. Both the skull and the entire stomach were consumed. To be transported on the journey, some of the mess was prepared into pemmican, which is dried and crushed meat combined with fat and put into the animal's intestines like sausage. Tents, clothing, babiche for snowshoes, nets, and a variety of other items were made from the cured hide of the caribou. Tools were made from the caribou's bones and antlers. In addition, the Chipewyan hunted waterfowl, moose, muskox, buffalo, deer, bears, and beavers. They used toboggans to transport their prey and snowshoes to stalk wildlife during the winter. They also pursued freshwater species like trout, bass, pike, and whitefish by fishing lakes and rivers. They used a variety of tools to fish, including as spears, barbed arrows, nets, and hooks. In order to catch fish, the Chipewyan also built weirs, which are wooden or stone pens. They also used canoes to fish. Fish that weren't eaten right away were preserved by smoking or sun-drying. Plants were a small part of the Chipewyan diet. However, they did eat some of the tundra plants. They prepared a soup out of moss and consumed fermented lichens that were taken from caribou stomachs. The Chipewyan were known for their metalworking in addition to their leather, wood, stone, and bone crafts. They found copper nuggets in the soil along the Copperman River and worked the material into the appropriate shape using annealing procedures, which involve alternate heating and hammering. They used copper to make a variety of tools, including drills, ice chisels, knives, axes, awls, scrapers, arrowheads, and spearheads. They also traded the raw material with neighboring Dole tribes for food, shells, and other goods. A large portion of the Chipewyan band's labor was performed by women, including cooking, curing leather, building fires, and many other tasks. They also performed a large portion of the lugging, dragging toboggans and carrying goods on their backs. In fact, women were subservient to their husbands and held a position in Chipewyan culture that was at least as low as that of any other Native American group. The women were the first to go hungry when the food ran out. In post-contact times, Chipewyan women gained recognition for their silk embroidery, beading, and quill work, despite their other laborious efforts. A special place in Chipewyan mythology was devoted to the dog. According to their Genesis story, the human species was fathered by a dog. Whenever possible, tribal people gave their pets healthy food. However, they would consume their dogs in order to survive at the harshest of the winter when they were starving. Although cannibalism was frowned upon and reserved for extreme circumstances, the Chipewyan would also consume their own bodies in order to live. The Chipewyan typically left their corpses uncovered so that scavenger animals and birds could eat them. The fur trade and the Chipewyan. The non-Indian exploration of Western Canada was significantly influenced by the Chipewyan. Their first encounters were with fur trading firms. In order to develop commercial contacts with the tribe, the Hudson Bay Company established the trading stations of York Factory in 1682 and Churchill in 1717 on Hudson Bay. Matonabbee was a Chipewyan guide to Samuel Hearne who, from 1768 to 1776, traveled with the Hudson Bay Company through the Churchill, Coppermine, and Slave Rivers all the way to the Arctic Ocean. With the assistance of Chipewyan guides, Alexander Mackenzie, an explorer for the Northwest Company, became the first non-Indian to traverse the entire continent of North America between 1789 and 1793. Fort Chipewyan, which was established in 1788 on Lake Athabasca, in the center of the tribe's land, served as his base of operations. The way of life for the Chipewyan people was altered by the fur traders' arrival and the construction of trading stations within their territory. For starters, the French traders brought firearms to the Cree that lived nearby. This allowed the Cree, who had long been the Chipewyan's enemies, to seize some of their land. The merchants also infected the Chipewyan. In 1781, more than half of their people died in a smallpox outbreak that devastated most of their bands. In 1858, Henry Farrad, a Catholic priest, became the first missionary to the Chipewyan at Fort Resolution. He translated a condensed version of the New Testament into the Chipewyan language. The Chipewyan lands. In 1876, 1877, 1899, and 1906, the tribe and the Canadian government negotiated a number of treaties in which the tribe agreed to provide them with supplies, reserve lands, and annual payments. Several Chipewyan bands now have reserves in the Northwest Territories, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Alberta. Hunting is a part of life for many tribal people.